Greetings, YouTube. It's Alan, and I am back with another Fi deck tech. And to all my lubers out there,
Rise up.
I'm joined today by Miles. Would you like to go ahead and introduce yourself, Miles?
Yeah, hey everybody. I'm Miles. I'm a local to Bay Area. I play a lot with Alan. Um, I've been playing since a little bit after Crucible came out, and I've been trying to get more serious about the game later. And so I, of course, have to follow the advice of my dear friend Alan Lube.
Thank you very much for that. All right, let's go right into this. So basically, I made this hybrid Fi deck a little bit before this past weekend of Rotonads, or weekend 3 of Rotonads. And so the point of this hybrid Fi list was basically to just be the main deck is still the exact same, almost the exact same budget combo list that I've shared before, except with Double Strike instead of Inflame. Just because usually when you're comboing off, I have felt that Double Strike has been more consistent at being 2 attacks, whereas Inflame you kind of needed some time to get it going. But yeah, and then in the sideboard, I kind of just included Kodachi's Breaking Point, CNC, Take the Tempo. This was basically like a Lexi hate sideboard, and I didn't really have any other plans since. But I unfortunately did not get to play this past weekend, but Miles piloted this deck, and why don't you share how that went, Miles?
Yeah, so this past weekend I played in two RTNs, one in Berkeley and then another one on Sunday in Fresno. So Saturday at Berkeley, I made top eight. I lost my first round, went 0-1 and then went 4-1 to end. So it was pretty great Saturday. Sunday, I just had a little rough time at Fresno and went 2-3. But and that led to kind of some tweaks we're thinking about. But overall, the deck felt great. The matchup into things like other aggro decks like Viserai, or even Briar feels like pretty reasonable. The things that I was like less confident with was like Ranger or maybe Guardian. And I think the sideboard helps a lot with those. So
Nice, very nice. All right, and then after hearing like about or after looking into like other Fi decks that like me and my friends or other friends have made, and also just seeing like Fi decks that have won, and also just hearing from what Miles was talking about from his experience, it definitely seems like 3 tome is like definitely no longer the move. It's kind of just too much for the most part. And
yeah,
it bricks your
definitely.
hands a lot, right?
Yeah, that was the issue I had a couple of the games on Sunday. If I'm like turn zero, I had draw a hand with like two tomes. I like can't block out, and then I go turn two. You still have the tomes, so you put up kind of a bad defense, like a bad, return volley. Or if you need like a crucial pivot turn and you just don't have blocks or don't have the ability to play out the tomes, it's definitely rough. But I mean, when it hits, it's still, phenomenal. So we still want them, but maybe just less than three.
Nice. And then also Vest of the First Fist, a lot of people have been starting to go on the Blossom of Spring train. I was thinking about it for a while. I just felt like with this list, since it did run 3 tomes, sometimes that extra resource did matter. But this does have a lot of counterplay where if your opponent blocks out your first 2 attacks, it can feel your turn can feel stuffed and you just wasted, like a Stubby's Pop or something. So yeah, with that said, let's go into our first new list, which is basically leaning more. So for these first 2 lists, we're going to show a Fi that leans more into the combo aspect of just like trying to pop off on turn 2 and deal like 30 plus damage, instead of having like the sideboard with kodachis and that sort of hybrid esque nature. So going into Miles' list, we have the Blossom of Spring, which we talk about. We've brought Furnace back in, just for like things like Ranger, maybe Bravo and Prism. Furnace is definitely pretty good. I didn't have it in this the original list, simply because with belittles and tomes and things like that, I always wanted resource generation. But with this list, since we're cutting some of those things, having Furnace is much more doable. See other changes: 3 Rise from the Ashes. We added in some Snatch. Tomes went into the sideboard. We added 1 more Salt the Wound for houses. And the sideboard is a little different. Instead of the Kodachi and Lexi Hate, we have things like Erase Face, and that all you got for the Fire Mirror. So let's first talk about Rise from the Ashes. Why do you like this card, Miles?
Yeah, so I think one of the issues I was running into was, hands that were like all red on rare occasion. I mean, we have about, I think, 12 or 14 blues, which is a little less than, one per four cards. So on those like off turns where you get too many reds, previously we had, I believe it's called like Mounting Anger, the one cost. And in this deck, I cut out Mounting Anger for Rise from the Ashes. So you have a 0 cost opener, and enables things like Blaze Headlong for like 7 to open your turn, which is like really great. Another thing is Phoenix Form when you get to 2 or 3 Phoenix Flames is kind of incredible for 0. And with just Flame Call Awakening where we cut in Flame, you kind of struggle to ever get 3 unless you draw one into a hand with Phoenix Form. And Rise from the Ashes can enable you to get, 2 or 3 out just on the turn of a Phoenix Form. So I think that's a pretty great addition. I also talked to one of the 5 players I played against, and he was really high on it in Fresno. So I think I want to try it out. I know Alan has looked at it before, but I think I'm going to look at it again.
Yeah, I mean, I've tried it a few times, and honestly, this is like the one card I always like flip flop back and forth on because there were times where I've run this card and I'd be like, I wish this was a Mounting Anger instead. And there's other times where I'm like, okay, well, if I have Rise from the Ashes, get back a Phoenix Flame, play Art of War, banish the Phoenix Flame, you just get so much value off of that.
Yeah.
So it's definitely one of those things that I've gone back and forth on. Um, the sideboard, we kind of just threw in good stuff for this. Like we don't really know exactly how to feel like sideboarding yet. Like Erase Face is obviously nice versus things like Briar, Viscerai, even like Dash, right? And then
Yeah.
the tomes is like we actually don't know when to put those in. Kind of difficult, but
Yeah, so my thing for a race face is like definitely playing against Viserai. This weekend I think I played against 3 or 4 Viserais, and it was kind of a coin flip a lot of times, like who's going to hit more damage first. And most times you're throwing out your whole hand and they're not blocking, and then they're doing the same to you. And if you have a big turn where you just end, they haven't been taking any blocks and they've been taking all this damage, and then you end with, a race face for 6, it can stuff so much of what Viserai's trying to do because almost all of the cards care about them maintaining the rune blade status. So I think it's really great there. I think also into Briar, it ruins Channel Mountain Heroic because you can't channel Earth if you get hit by a race face. And those matchups are pretty even, and that can kind of start to tip it in your favor.
yep, makes sense. Makes sense. All right. For this next list, this is basically just gonna be my version of what I think like a more combo Fai would look like. It's very honestly very similar to this list, and as we like play test more together and stuff, we'll probably end up on this
Yeah, somewhere in the
finishing on the
middle,
same
right?
list
Yeah.
probably, or like here and there. But notable differences is I'm not running the Rise from the Ashes. I still have 2 Mounting Angers. I decided to leave 1 Tome of the Firebrand in the main deck because I think 1 is probably okay. 2 and 3 just like ends up breaking too much. We have the 2 snatches, same as before. It's almost like a rupture card, except you don't need that many chain links, so that's nice
Yeah.
there. And then let's see, there's any other main deck differences? I don't think everything else is mostly. The side deck's a little different. Since I only run the 1 tome and I don't need space for what's it called? Um, for it in the sideboard, I have the usual CNC, the race face. I have 2 that all you got. Might bring this up to 3 if Fai is super popular, but I also have 2 energy potions, and this is mainly for like Oldham, Icelander, Lexi, any of the ice decks where you just want to up your blue count just a little bit. And also, even playing it out is also nice because it plays around things like Blizzard, or it helps you against like Frostbites for Icelander, things like that. So I think
Yeah,
this is
definitely.
this sideboard card is definitely like a metagame thing. Like if your metagame is like all Fi and aggro, you don't need this. But like at a larger event when you're trying to go into like so many matchups, this would probably be nice. But yeah, I think probably we'll try out each of our lists and see like if we like Rise from the Ashes. 1 tome is too little, if the snatches feel good, if Mounting Anger still feels bad, things like that. And we'll probably like come to a consensus on what the list should look like. But yeah, for the most part, Combo Fi is definitely still very strong. Blossom of Spring is like helps a lot because previously when you wanted to get the vest off, you needed something to hit, and if you pop stubbies and start attacking, like your opponent could just start blocking with like their fridge or with like a couple cards, and it made things very difficult. So
Yeah, it gives you a lot more agency. That was definitely the case where it's like, okay, I have 4 attacks, I just need 1 to hit, and if they block them and you get stuffed on the vest, it's like so bad. So the
yeah,
consistency of the Blossom of Spring is really nice.
yeah, basically. So yeah, it seems that a lot of people are definitely on like this more combo oriented Fi trade now. There's also other things that we haven't really considered too much, like yellow cards, like yellow Lava Vein Loyalty, yellow Rise from the Ashes, blue Rise from the Ashes, yellow Brand with Cinderclaw. There's a lot of. And then lastly, I wanted to show this is my updated hybrid list. So basically, like my inspiration was this list was to try to still be combo enough where I could beat aggro matchups, but have a sideboard plan that is good enough into disruption that brings the matchup down up to like 35-40% hopefully. So as you'll see, most of the things are the same. What's cut is like Blossom of Spring, because this deck doesn't focus as much on like OTKing the opponent. It like tries to like disrupt and play a more like slower game a bit, like just slightly slower though. Like it's still gonna be fast because you're 5, but like Lynx is gonna be like an Oldham card, whereas in the combo decks, Lynx is like your go-to in almost in most matchups. So things like that. I wanted to try Breaking Point in the main deck because I think that's just another thing that slows down the game if you can stall out your opponent and you just accrue more value over time. And then having the fridge with Furnace and Shuko also helps a lot with like slowing down the game a bit. I have one flex slot in this deck, which I decided to try Burn Away. But this could be like a Red Rise from the Ashes. It could be like a Tome or something. This part is flexible. Other cards are mostly the same. I decided to throw in the Snatches to try it out. Then I'm not running the Tomes at all in this deck because I want this deck to be able to block a little bit better and things like that. And so for the Kodachis in the sideboard, this is for matchups like Lexi, Azalea, and potentially Bravo because it just simply lets you play better on less cards and threaten more mass triggers. Because what I find with disruption decks like Lexi and Bravo is that in order for them to disrupt you, they need to keep their hand. And so if you're pressuring Mask a lot, it makes it more difficult for them. Like obviously with this deck, you can just with the combo deck, you can just outright kill them if you get like a free turn. But with this deck, I feel like having the Kodachis just lets you play like with less cards, and so that helps a lot. Salt in the sideboard with links for Oldham basically, and then 3 take same energy potions, and then 3 take the tempos. Take the tempo honestly is like a whatever kind of card. Like it's very nice when you have Kodachis, but without Kodachis, I think it's pretty bad when you play Searing Emberblades. So in this deck, it sort of has a home, but I wouldn't be surprised if I cut this for something else, also like Erase Face or something, because as it stands right now, this deck is like more focused against beating things like Lexi or Bravo with the sideboard, whereas like you might falter against things like Viserai or Briar, whereas like combo deck would probably do better there. So what are your? Do you have any thoughts on this hybrid list, Miles? What would you say?
Yeah, I like it a lot. I like the flex slot with Burnaway. I think, it's a very interesting way to kind of get around the issue of if you have like 3 Phoenix Flames in graveyard, you can only get 2 usually from like get one back on a turn, arsenal it, get one back with Fi the next turn. So having 3, Burnaway gets you to sneak in. I think people probably aren't planning for that card. I really like the bringing the fridge main board to kind of like refocus the matchup to kind of block out against other aggro a little bit and kind of maintain strength in like against big tall attacks from Bravo or Rangers. I know this weekend my first match on Sunday was against an Azalea and I got locked into a red in the ledger for 4 turns in a row, which was absolutely terrible because I couldn't block it correctly with the dominate. And things like this furnace bringing back in is so good against that.
Yeah, I think another thing I forgot to mention about this deck is that I cut the Phoenix forms also, just because like since we're not running things like Inflame, we only have Flame Call Awakening. It's like this deck isn't trying to like combo and have like some crazy OTK with Phoenix form. It's more so just trying to be a consistent pressure and a little bit better blocking ability with things. I mean, Phoenix form does block 3, but there's just a lot of hands where it breaks your hand. Whereas like
Yeah, exactly.
taking it out like gives more space for things like Snatch for pressure. So yeah, these are our updated file lists. We probably will tune these more and then play them at the last weekend of Road to Nationals. Definitely a lot of testing to be done, and hopefully we'll succeed there. Any last words,
Yeah.
Miles?
No, I'm just excited. It was really fun to pilot this last week. I mean, I went from always forcing fine drafts to trying to figure it out in CC. And I think like the list we had to start was really great, and we're only getting even closer to like peak 5 for the last week of RTN. So I'm hyped.
All right, and that's all from us.